Everybody says that Malaysians are poor because of low income and high cost of living. That's not true. I know because I used to believe that too, until I became a millionaire and I realized that it really doesn't have anything to do with income. In this video, I'll show you what keeps Malaysians trapped and how to break free of it. Let me tell you a story about this guy called Marcus. Now, I met him in 2015 and he was a young little chap. He was quite successful, I think about 6,500 ringgit. I think that's a pretty decent income for a person who's actually living in the city, right? But I started to talk to him. He was actually living paycheck to paycheck. And here's the worst part. Why was he talking to me that time? It was because he just hit a financial emergency. One of his family members was diagnosed for a terminal disease and he had to fork out money to pay for him. Unfortunately, he got into massive debts after that. So I asked him a question. How much did you actually pay yourself last month? How do you actually manage your money? And to my surprise, when he started to disclose his habits, it was quite scary. What I discovered after talking to Marcus probably applies to most Malaysians, and I've broken it down to these 5 habits that will keep most people poor. Habit number 1, salary in, salary out. I asked Marcus, what do you do when you get a salary? That's the day I start to pay everything off. And I think most Malaysians do that with their salaries as well. They pay their immediate expenses, like their rentals, their car loans, their housing loans, parents. They get this psychological relief saying, oh, okay, now that I've paid off all my debts, I can now spend my money. The truth is that they're not paying themselves first. They're paying everybody else first. In Marcus' case, when I started to look through all the things that he had to pay, he was down to only 200 ringgit within the first week. What change in my life is what I call my millionaire habits. Whenever I get my money coming in, I put them into separate allocations. The first thing I do is put 10% away for investments, another 10% away for long-term savings. I have this thing called the 6 jars. It's basically allocating certain percentages away to different parts of your investments and your lifestyle portfolios. And the first thing I'm going to tell you right now to simplify anything is that at least 20% of my money goes away to a permanent account that I cannot touch regardless how much debt I have. And that money is to be allocated for only purely investments. Paying yourself first does not mean putting that aside for something fun or for expenses. Paying yourself first is for your future growth. And that means you only have 80% to live off more or less. And in most cases, most people cannot do that. So how can you overcome that? Well, the funny part about this is it's more of a mindset rather than a physical attribute. What happens is in your mind, you start to think, how can you do more with less? So in Marcus' case, he cut down a lot of unnecessary expenses that he could to save that 20%. The most drastic thing he did was actually move into a smaller place. Well, since he was only living alone, he doesn't need a 1,700 ringgit apartment. So he moved into a single room. He started to look into ways of how he could sell off his car, which happened in the next 4 months, and got himself a decent second-hand car. Now, here's the bad news. Saving that money alone, that 20%, will not make you rich. Habit number 2, let me just share another story by another guy by the name of Daniel. Okay, so Daniel is a person who is also working in a city, young executives, and he has increased his pay a few times from 3,000 to 5,000 to 7,000. But every time he gets a pay increase, guess what? He upgrades his lifestyle. So Daniel has this habit of actually spending to match his lifestyle. He says that he needs that in order for him to be successful. He has to look successful. So I looked into his accounts and guess what? He was still the same, just over broke. And when he actually got a $2,000 raise, he actually increased his spending by another 1,800 ringgit. So in other words, he was actually only just saving another $200 more, even though his income has increased by more than 50 to 60%. What if you were to put that 1,800 ringgit per month extra into some sort of investments instead? So 1,800 turns out to be 21,600 a year. Now, if you do that for 5 years, that's $100,000. If you do it for 10 years, it's $216,000 in your bank account. Now, if you do something which gives you an average returns of anything from 6 to 12%, so let's just take 10%. Right, if he's able to get a 10% savings a year, accumulated, this, my friend, you don't get back $216,000. You get back 344,250 ringgit. Wealthy millionaires do not spend equivalent to what they make. They're smart people. So you might be thinking, but I need to enjoy life. And that's exactly what habit number 3 wants you to think. Habit number 3, instant gratification. Most people don't work 9 to 5. Some people work 9 to 9, 12 hours a day, and they push themselves a lot. At the end of the day, when you win a big contract or you get a good review from your boss, and you get a bonus or promotion, you tell yourself, hey, it's time for me to treat myself, right? But this is where we fall into the trap. Every time we have this kind of celebrations, we actually spend this money, which is unnecessary. Like for example, a Starbucks, which costs you anything from 18 to 25 ringgit for a cup of coffee. Most people end up in the shopping malls on weekends, starting to do window shopping, but ending up with 2 or 3 bags worth of clothes that they seldom use or never use. And once in a while, what do? Right after shopping, feet hurts, want to go for a massage, or on a nice movie, or even at the clubs. And this money goes away pretty fast. Okay, this is one of the biggest tips that I'm going to share with you right now that got me to be a millionaire, and it's called delayed gratification. I always treat myself last. I pay myself first, but I treat myself last. Instead of spending 1,500 ringgit a month, okay, on dinners, stuff like that, I spend it on stocks, right? And yes, I still do get my dopamine hits because number one, I technically am still spending money, right? It gets exciting, especially when you see the stocks go up in price. And the best part of it all is that when the payout comes back later on, it feels a lot better. Now, here comes habit number 4. And this, my friend, would hit 99% of you. It's called the debt trap. How many of you people over here love your credit cards? I have 0 credit cards on me. I know that doesn't sound right. I know you've seen videos where they say, okay, leverage on your credit. You learn how to use your credit cards and rotate them, get some personal loans, live off the banks. And I do that too, okay? Yes, it's true, but I have 0 credit cards. The majority of Malaysians have more than 1 credit card with them. And most of them are actually living not paycheck for paycheck, but credit card debt to credit card debt. Majority of people I know right now are actually trying to pay off the minimum amounts of their credit cards just to get by every single month. I know people who are actually making more than 5 figures, 10,000 ringgit and above, and they have credit card debts which are about 30,000 and above. The debt culture is really very bad, and this is one of the things that's killing a lot of people right now. Most people go into it. Why? Because of all these things that the credit card entice them with, right? Free bags, free trips. I would tell most of the people I meet is to cut up all these small credit cards, even personal loans, and try to work and live within your means. Here's the math. It's not just the interest, but it's the opportunity cost. So with every 500 ringgit in debt payment is 500 ringgit not invested. One of the biggest reasons why they don't get into being rich is because they are more focused on paying off their debts. You see, there's only one way you can go. You either pay down something or you invest. And the moment you're in this debt trap, whereby every month your interest starts to increase because you only pay minimal, or you spend more future money and accumulate it under as debt, you're focusing on trying to reduce your payments. That's horrible. That's not a way of getting rich. Rich people don't start thinking, how do I pay off my expenses? Rich people says, how do I use my money to grow my wealth? We focus on asking ourselves, how can I get to my 10,000 ringgit in investments? That will return me anything from 6 to 10%. So the bad news about people living in credit cards is that you're always telling yourself how much more I can spend, versus a millionaire who goes out there and says how much more I can invest. And now I'm going to share with you the habit that is the most controversial. Habit number 5, okay, the invest when I have more money mentality. My biggest regret was I didn't start investing even earlier. Now, I started at the age of 32, and I wish I started when I was 26 or even 21 years old, because I know the power of compounding. I would recommend anybody to start investing when they're 20 to 21 years old. Do you know that if you could actually put in even $10,000 or $5,000 at the start at 21 years old to 25 years old, that money rolled over a short period of time would have made you a few $100,000 by the time you are 40. So the people I know who are financially well off, okay, invest very early in their lives, owns 3 or 4 properties by the time they're 60 years old. And they didn't do it the fast way. They just invested very normally at the age of 20 to 30s, right? Buying their 2, 3, 4 properties, anything from $200,000 to $500,000. By the time they were 60 years old, all these properties were worth more than $1 million, all right, in totality. So please, don't tell yourself When you have enough money, invest. Invest now, then you get tons of money. Whatever I shared with you will not make you to be a millionaire overnight. But that's not the goal. The goal is to get you not rich instantly, but rich forever. Yes, it may take you anything from 3 to 5 years to maybe even 10 years if you're very conservative. But okay, it's a safe, steady way of doing it. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And if you want more specific details on how to start investing, come join us on an online course where you can learn more about how you can start with very little capital. See you then.